My name is Afua Osei, and I'm the co-founder of She Leads Africa, a community that helps young African women achieve their professional dreams. Whether it is building a successful business or climbing the corporate ladder, we provide them with digital content and engaging events to help them reach that next stage. Since launching this company 2 years ago, I have spent more than 97% of my time thinking about women, researching women, trying to find women. So tonight I decided not to talk about women at all. So ladies, you can take a break, take a selfie, go get another drink. This conversation is for the guys. Anytime, don't worry. So I decided to have this conversation after one of my friends surprised me. I was at a concert, minding my business, listening to my music, and he decided to have a serious conversation about feminism. I don't know what was written on my forehead that day, but I said, okay, let's hear it. He said to me, I was raised by a single mother. She put all of us boys through school. I really want my girlfriend to stay ambitious and build her business, but I am not a feminist. I don't believe in that thing. I don't know if you all know about the emoji that has the wide eyes and the open mouth, but I was sitting there like this. Because I thought, of all the people, right, who would say something like this to me, it wouldn't be this guy. And most people don't say that kind of stuff to me because they know the kind of work that I do. But as I listened a bit more to him and I thought about it, I went from irritated, because he was interrupting the concert, to a bit sad. Sad that this young man, who is a stereotypical young progressive African, he was under the age of 30, he had studied in the abroad, he had a fancy corporate job, that this guy would be someone who didn't think that feminism related to him. And I realized that us as young women who decide that we're going to be feminists have done a very poor job in making it seem realistic or practical to someone like him about feminism. I imagine that for this young man, when he looked out into the atmosphere, what was talked about feminism online, on Twitter rants, from the Western media, it didn't connect with his life. And as a young African woman, very rarely does it connect with mine, but I'm able to power through the struggle. And I realized that if we're going to build and create a new African society, we had to do that through our mates, our friends, our brothers, our cousins who are sitting there right next to us and have these type of conversations. We can't blame the older generation and say that it's just culture and it's just values and it's tradition that's holding them back if the exact same thing continues and continues to resonate. So I've decided that I need to do a better job telling a different story to young African men about how feminism relates to them and how it connects to their lives. So that's what I'm going to do tonight. Talk about 3 stories in which I've seen African men demonstrate those values that I think that are very closely tied to who we are as Africans, and how they've done that through their daily interactions with me. I'll first start with my father, James Kwahu Osei, born and raised in Kwahu, and I think he's a typical African man. I remember I was 12 years old and I was negotiating for some game with this woman in a store and she called me a miser. And I didn't know what that word meant, so I went back home and I said, Daddy, this woman called me a miser. He was like, good. I was like, okay, what does that mean? He was like, oh, she called you cheap. I said, okay, so I guess he actually is a Kwahu man. But I have brothers and I have sisters, and not once did I ever feel as if the expectations for me were any different than my siblings. And I remember him once telling me, never let anyone else decide or make decisions for your life. Of course, this was after I had a bad report card and he was worried that I wouldn't get into a good college, but that message stayed true to me. And I believe that he meant that for himself as well, that he as my father didn't feel as if he had the right to tell me what to do with my life. And I know many men, young and old, who are raising young women to be strong and independent, and they want their daughters to have fulfilling careers. They want them to be successful, and they want them to have happy lives. Why aren't we telling that story to African men as an example of feminism? My second story revolves around a young woman that we work with. Her business was growing very well, it was very successful, and she needed help. She couldn't find any team members that she really wanted to work with, and she asked her husband to join her with the company. He had a corporate job, and he chose to leave his job to work with his wife. Now, some people would say, oh, he chose to work under his wife or join his wife's company, but for him, he wanted his wife to be successful, he wanted her to be happy, and he wanted them to be able to build a business that would create wealth for themselves and future generations, right? Caring for your partner, wanting to see them build wealth and be successful, I think are feminist values. But we're not telling stories about men and women working together to build family businesses. I mean, I think that's a perfect example of feminism. My last example is of a young man who unfortunately grew up without his dad. His dad had a lot of women in his life, and unfortunately, his mother was not a priority. And so he has vowed that he is going to stay, committed and faithful to the woman in his life. He's going to be honest and transparent about his dealings, and that he's going to be a good father. And I don't know any other better example of feminism than that. Treating your partner and women with respect, being honest and straightforward, right? And raising sons and daughters to respect others. But unfortunately, when we talk about feminism, we don't talk about those real life day-to-day examples. Right? And while I have really great stories about men who've been positive feminists in my life, I also have the stories where it didn't quite work out that well. After business school, I joined a company in which I was paid less than another man. I knew exactly what he was making and what I was making. Our qualifications were the same. We actually sat next to each other at graduation. And when I told my friend at the concert that this happened to me, and that was one of the reasons why feminism is important, he said, oh no, that only happens in America. That doesn't happen here. I said, my friend, it happened right here. Like, I can show you my paperwork, right? And this company was ran by men. All the leaders were men. And I wish one of them would have stood up and said something in that conversation about how this isn't fair and that we should treat all people the same. And if they have the same qualifications and if they have the same degrees, then we should treat them and value them the same. So I think that we have a lot of work to do. I don't want men carrying banners. I don't need anyone to wear a t-shirt that says they're a feminist. I think it's in those small examples and in those small day-to-day interactions that enable individuals and men to stand up and demonstrate their values at work when someone's not being treated fairly, with your friends when people are making disparaging comments. Those are the moments when we need men to stand up and represent their values. So I think it's about time that we challenge ourselves, both men and women, to talk about those examples and talk about those things that make us better people and help us create a better society. And I hope that today we start to think about what are those small things we can do to help create a more fair, diverse, and inclusive community.